Hi and welcome everyone to this episode of Breakpoint. The topic for today is Crypto Shield for Vehicle Security. Our guest for today is Sandip Dholakia. He's Principal Security Architect and Co-Chair of Cryptography, Center of Excellence at SAP Global Security and Compliance.
Ways around to prevent or minimize the hacks, right? I mean, yes, automakers are doing.
What are the key components that you generally deal with, like from a design perspective when you're looking at the car software, or even from an anti-theft standpoint? What are the key components that
When we drive the car, we don't realize this, but cars now have more CPUs in there than the more stronger VMs in the cloud.
any fun
Yeah,
incidents or stories from there with your final testing and everything being successful?
car was starting without it, and everybody were happy. But okay, it wasn't even there.
Welcome to Breakpoint Security Podcast, folks. Join us as we explore the fascinating world of smart security teams and their cutting edge security and engineering practices. We'll share fun and engaging stories about clever optimization techniques that scale your defenses and also keep your data safe. Tune in and be a part of the conversation where exciting innovation meets real world application in cybersecurity. Welcome to Breakpoint, Sandeep.
Yeah, hi Nilu, I'm very happy to be here, and I really want to thank you for having me on the show.
Great. How are you today?
I'm doing very good. How are you doing?
Good, good. And I'm quite excited for the conversation that we have ahead of us. Actually, when I was thinking of this, and it was, and I was going through your profile and looking at, the patents and other things that you have in this space, it was quite interesting for me. And it reminded me of my previous days. So I think it was more than a decade ago when I was doing development for, automated transmission on vehicles, because there'll be a lot of vehicle conversation that we will have in this. And even in those days, which was more than a decade ago, when we were working on automated transmission, we were looking at, hundreds of factors within a car, including, for example, the sensors which will sense different parameters in the vehicle, to the pressure, to whether it has what angle the vehicle is in, what is the weight that is there, so all of that gets correlated together to give you that one output, saying if the gear needs to change, and to what level. So to just answer that one question, and I was just thinking of, when we talk about anti-theft, which will be a majority of our conversations, this might be a lot of things, right? And recently I was also reading about the numbers of theft, because we don't tend to hear that in common circles a lot. Earlier you would have the key kind of physical key being stolen, or the circuitry being changed by the attackers, or thieves who are trying to steal cars. But
Like the hot wire, yeah.
yeah, it's not the same case anymore. In fact, I was reading that the theft for non-key or keyless kind of attacks has grown way more than the physical key attacks. So my first question to you, let's start with stealing the cars. How has that changed from earlier when you started working in this space, and what do you see today?
Right. So, okay, to start with, I think you are absolutely right. Things have changed. How people steal car, uh, and like on the both side, right? On the thieves side as well as on the automaker side, they both have advanced a lot. But still, the issue is still there. We try to protect the vehicle, and the thieves are trying to steal it, right? And that has always be there, right? Like head to head, always. But in like very old days, right? Before we had all these electronics in the vehicle, the cars were merely like, short circuit. When you turn the key, uh, basically your starting gets shorted, and it starts the car. So what they did back in 80s, that they cut the wire, and hot wire they call it, like they
Yeah.
directly connect you directly, like we do it at home, like
Hmm.
temporary connection. And it is how they did it. So it was very easy, right? As long as they can break the window, They get in, they cut the wire. All they need is one stone to break the glass window and one
Hmm.
plier to cut the wire, and they're all good to go. So that has changed, right? Over time, automakers have introduced some initial steps, like back in 90s, right? They introduced a fixed code. So the key has a code like 1, 2, 3, 4, like a 4-digit number, and same thing is there in the ignition. So when the key is turned into ignition, it energizes and it reads the code and makes sure the 1, 2, 3, 4 is same as what is stored on the ignition
Oh.
side. But it was very easy, right? So thieves, they did not take long time to realize that, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. So they make the key with 1, 2, 3, 4 and steal the car next day. So automaker went step ahead and they said, no, no, we have to do something more. So they started to store the code in the ECM, the engine control module, which is basically a CPU, uh, which is
For the car.
essentially a CPU in the engine. Yeah, actually for the engine itself. So they store there, but still, I mean, we have all the tools to read the data on the wire. So they read that, and then again they are trying to steal. So it is why we have to make it so strong that the code changes every time. We have a different code every time, so it can't be duplicated, and that's where the cryptography and the latest technology comes into play.
Yeah, so this is actually like a cat and mouse game that, I think it happens in many areas, and this is not an exception. Okay, so since we're talking about the car systems and the car software itself, right? And when we talk about the days of physical key and stealing cars are over, which means a lot of that has moved to software. What are, just for the audience and for ourselves to know, what are the key components that you generally deal with, like from a design perspective when you're looking at the car software, or even from an anti-theft standpoint, what are the key components that come into play?
So it's like when we drive the car, we don't realize this, but cars now have more CPUs in there than the more stronger VMs in the cloud. They have
Okay.
like 10 to 15 CPUs all over the place, right? Because everything we do, right, has to be sent somehow, and the data has to be passed. So they call like ECM for the engine, right? There is a CPU, there is a body, there is a brake module. Like all of these essentially have their own CPUs and the controls. And as you
Oh,
said initially, right, all the data fed uh, through different sensors like oil, brake, speed, angle, heat, all that, right? Even the raindrops, right? Nowadays, like if raindrops fall on the steel windshield, it automatically starts the wiper. It's like everything
okay.
is sensed, right? So you don't even have to turn on, right? If it gets dark, the headlights become brighter and things like that, right?
Yeah,
All
yeah.
these electronics, right? So and like we have all these, but this is not difficult part. The difficult part is they all needs to talk to each other at the same time with even if they are misaligned by milliseconds, things could go drastically wrong, right? And it is why we need to know the different components in the car. Like if you take like smart car, like Tesla or GM as a Cruise, right, and all those vehicles which drives on their own, right? Uh, uh, Actually, now also they have like Waymo from Google, and like Waymo is run as a taxi, right, as a cab, right? And so what happens, right? If they detect somebody in front of you, it stops. Or like why? Because the sensor immediately detect there is a block. So that data fed into the CPU, which talks to the vehicle's main CPU, which they call like body control module. So BCM, then BCM sends a signal to the brake module. So there's another CPU. Goes to the brake module, and then it alerts brake module, hey, you got to stop. There is a thing in front of us. So all these things has to happen in like fraction of seconds, right? Otherwise, somebody could die. So this is how uh, it's not only important that we have all these on board on the vehicle, they need to be integrated and in sync, right, all the time, so that it can be executed in very timely manner. So these are the overall components, various components in the car. For anti-theft, we have uh, four more, uh, four very important components. One is ECM, obviously, as I explained, the CPU in the engine. And then other is like BCM, the CPU in the body, because that is important now because we have the keyless entry and everything. And then there is a what they call like pass theft. There's a small CPU near the ignition key itself, and the ignition key itself is encoded too. So these are the four major components that needs to align with each other, synchronized, and talks to talk to each other to make sure that whole thing happens in 150 to 300 milliseconds. The communication, so it's very critical and time sensitive.
Okay, okay. So this is like an entire ecosystem within the car, I think, because there are multiple
You're right.
CPUs. Are there also, this is a trivial question, but are there also RAMs with each of these, like different random access
Oh yes.
memories because they're different CPUs,
Right, right, right. They have their own, yeah, own RAM
memory
chips on
module?
board. Right, right, right. And it is how, and see, the thing is it can't be slow like our RAM in our laptop, right? Because we are talking milliseconds here. So the data has to be accessed very fast in and out. So it's not only we need RAM, but we need very high-end technology to
Yeah,
exchange the data quickly.
at that time, real time, almost real time.
Yes, almost real time. Yeah.
So let's start then. I think, given this background, let's dive deeper into what we have been thinking. So, in terms of the threats itself, so when you're looking at, since I was talking about this being an ecosystem, right, it has all these systems are interconnected with each other, they have their own CPUs, a lot of processing happening, there are various factors. When you are looking at it from a security standpoint, um, what are the threats that you generally see? Because so there are two aspects which I wanted to cover. One is, how do you look at the threat model itself? Like, what are the typical kind of threats that you see and solve for? And is there a major challenge in the threat space that you would like to talk about?
Yes, there are two main issues, right, in terms of threats. Number one, right, we do not want to give any time to thieves to drive the vehicle even uh, like 15 feet away, because what tend to happen historically, that they moved the vehicle from uh, very high traffic area to back alley or somewhere, there where there are less people, less traffic. They just somehow crank the car, make sure it runs slightly, and just move away from the main area, right? So basically, they want to move it from out of sight, basically from people, and then take their time to break into it. So we want to avoid that time, because that is one of the important things, because that uh, like basically historically the data shows that that was the key factor, that somehow they buy time to work on the car, and we wanted to avoid that. So that was one of the very important design factor. And like it is why this time of 200 to 300 millisecond was set initially to do that. So it won't give them enough time to take car more than 15 feet away. And the other thing which happens now only, like historically it did not happen, but now we have keyless entry, keyless car, we have fobs, right? So
Yeah,
those
yeah.
fobs, right? So what happens? People keep the key near the window in their house, and thieves have devices now to read the data. So if you are too close to window, they can read the data
Can you,
from the kid.
I'll interrupt you a little. So, can you also share with our listeners what kind of data is being transmitted from this fob that they are reading?
Right. So basically, they have a chip inside the fob, obviously, and the data is essentially like vehicle information, like VIN number
Okay.
or the fob also have a fixed value of the code to open the
Okay.
doors, right? Like unlock the doors and things like that. So there is another small CPU or the module called RF, right? And this RFM is like basically uh, used to unlock the car, lock the car, things like that, right? Open the trunk and things like that. I mean, dicky. So they
Yeah.
actually do that.
For our Western audience, it would be good to learn.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
different terminology,
We
same
relate to it
same
a lot,
same
so
thing.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So basically they read all this data from the fob because fob well now actually fob can allow you to start the car also, but at the least, right, they can unlock the car and get into it. That is the minimum that they can do, right? I mean, even if they have a basic tool set,
Yeah, that's the primary
basic skill
function
level.
of, yeah, I mean, this is the fob for, I think most of the audience might know this, but you have this, the keyless setup where you can actually switch or just press that button where it will open or unlock the car remotely within a certain
Right,
distance.
right. And and the downside or like other side of it is AI, right? Earlier it was not easy. If you're not skilled, it take you time, right, to learn the tool,
Hmm.
read the data. Now you go to Chat GPT and ask how to read the form data. You have the information, right? So thieves don't have to be skilled anymore,
Yeah, yeah. You have an AI assistant for everything. Also.
right? So that goes against us, yeah, somehow. I mean, somewhat.
So I was thinking of the first case that you talked about, and this is a slight tangent that I wanted to take. When you are moving the car away from the original location, that's what we wanted to avoid. Is there some way, and this is not just related to that, maybe in other cases as well, when is there some way to actually authenticate or authorize for the car itself to know that somebody who's driving is the rightful owner? Like, are there initial, just like we set up other things, are there ways for the car where we are authenticating the user, just like we do in applications? You first authenticate, okay, this is the user, just like that, is the rightful owner, so that you know that this is a scenario for theft and not the actual owner doing this.
Right. So, yes, when you put the key in, right, the first thing happens is to check the key itself, that is it the right key, right? But that happens with the fixed code, fixed value. And what it does is allow us to start the car so we don't feel like a long wait after once you turn the key, we want to hear something, right? We want to start the car. So as soon as we do that, uh, immediately it will start the car. But at the same time, we know we can't use the fixed code and all that. We want to do the exchange, right? The key exchange and all that. So we need uh, more time than 150 millisecond. So what we do, we allow them to run the car without the key exchange for 150 millisecond, and that's the time. It's not enough time to go more than 10 to 15 feet. Um, but like meanwhile, in the background, ECM also talks to the key module and makes sure that exchange happens, the key exchange happens. And at this time, it's a different code. And if the exchange doesn't match, then it will shut off the car. So you have basically 150 millisecond to up to around 300 millisecond to make sure that the car runs. Otherwise, it will shut down.
Okay, okay, cool.
So
So,
authentication happens immediately, but it doesn't allow you to drive for a long time
hmm.
unless you make sure that it's the right key.
Okay, okay. Now coming to the key and the right key, the part that which I was also quite excited to discuss. This is the area where you also have a patent, and I think you've also helped with the designing of the algorithm, which is highly based on cryptography. So I wanted to you to actually touch upon and share with us what was the challenge that you were facing, that you tried to solve, and what was the solution that you actually proposed.
Right. So yeah, it's an interesting thing because before we get into it, like some small background here. So the whole thing happens in like three steps. So number one step is to learn the key, right? So when the car is being built, uh, the key has to be learned by both on the ignition side, uh, uh, on the BCM side, I should say, and also in the engine side, right? The both has to learn the key, and that is the symmetric key is being used, right? So they have the same key on both sides.
Both sides, okay.
Yeah, so that has to learn when car is built. It happens only once when you build a new car, or you replace engine or ECM in the engine, or you flash ROM itself in the ECM, things like that, right? So it happens rarely. It doesn't happen every day, but when this happens, it's very tricky. Number two, once you learn, right, we have to have that what you call like initialization or like a pre-release state, and that's what we talked about, that 150 millisecond allow to buy time for us to do the full release. And in the full release, we do the exchange. So once that initial initialization happens, that initial key crank happens, the part two in the background, ECM sends a, a uh, basically 4 bytes long code to the key. So now key has these 4 bytes, 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3, 0, 4. Now these 4 bytes key takes and match with the original key that was learned, right? Which ECM and this both sides is the same key. So those two values are added, and it will have the new answer, and it will come back to ECM, and ECM also does the same thing. Use the key that they have, the same key as the other side, and original 1, 2, 3, 4 bytes, and ultimately they have to match. So ECM says, "Oh, this is good. This is the same value. Now release it full. They can drive the car." At that time, they also check the VIN, the vehicle ID number, to make sure that somebody has not swapped the CPU, the ECM itself, right? Because you could learn your key somewhere else at your home, bring it here, put it in the car and drive. You can't do that because uh, the CPU in the CPU in the engine wants to make sure that they actually check the vehicle number also, vehicle ID number also. So these are the steps, right? Now, the first challenge is to program the key itself, right? On both ends, in the engine and in the body, on the key side and the engine side, right? Uh, that happens in the plant. So assembly line is going on, and people who does that in the plant, they build the vehicles. They are not engineers, right? They have no idea what's going on. So they are like uh, they are actually talking to each other, or having some songs playing in the background, singing with it, and do it, and like assembling the car, right? Is their job. So if they miss that window of 200 millisecond, that can mismatch. And when the car is built, and when they're trying to test, car will not start
So
because
this
the key
window of
wasn't learned.
200 milliseconds is exactly what. So there is these two modules that you're talking about, just to simplify it. So we have the
Mhm.
ECM and we have the BCM. And this 200 millisecond is in the factory. What does that mean?
So in fact, what they have to do is they have to make sure they have a same key, right? Because uh, this is uh, the key on ECM side as well as the key on BCM side, right? We have to have the same key on both end because the symmetric encryption. So key has to be on the same side, otherwise we can't match, right? The answers. So that key has to be programmed into both ROM, right? When they do it on the both CPUs, in the CPU itself. And this is what it happens, right? And that is a very small time because we need to program it within a given time. Otherwise, the reason behind, if you allow a long time to do that, anybody can take like error, okay, try this key, try this key, try this key, right?
Okay, so this is
We
like
don't
also a
want to happen that.
protection against people
Protection,
trying it
yes, yeah,
even at the
protection,
source, right? You cannot actually tamper
right,
with it because immediately it will flash that or
right,
yeah,
right,
yeah.
right. Because what you do at the source, right? You could do it at home too, right?
Hmm.
Like if you have all the tools,
Yeah,
and we
yeah.
want that to avoid because we don't want them to figure out the key, like
Hmm.
trial and error. Like this is like our accounts get locked after three incorrect
Yeah,
entry,
yeah,
right? If
yeah.
you use ID and password, right? Yeah, so it's the same theory basically, same analogy
Hmm.
that between the key, right? So once those keys are in there, right? Those keys and then from engine to the key to the body, we send 4 bytes, and the key that we programmed originally, the symmetric key, right? The symmetric key is used to populate the new data, new 4 bytes based on the 4 bytes received from the engine. Engine on its end does the same thing. Use the 4 bytes which was sent to the body vehicle, I mean body module, and use the key embedded, learned, and generate the new response. So now the challenge response has to match. And if they are same, then you release the vehicle for running.
Okay. Okay,
But
okay,
the
this is
key is
interesting.
right, right. So I think initially I did not specify. There are two different keys we are talking, right?
Hmm.
The key which is program, there's the encryption key we are talking, right? So encryption key is is learned in the plant, but then the vehicle key itself, the physical key or the fob, that's a different key we are talking, right? So just to back up, because now I realized I was saying key for both. So encryption key is learned in plant in ECM engine and body control both,
Hmm.
and encryption key is used on both sides. So engine sends 4 bytes to body control module, and body control module use encryption key and those 4 bytes to have the new data, new 4 bytes.
And what is the fob sending
Uh, so fob is not involved right now,
in
right?
this picture
Fob just
yet?
in
Yeah.
yeah. Fob is just uh, initializing this process.
Oh, okay, okay.
So that's a different key, basically. Is what yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So now it's actually clearer. So okay, so that is the thing, and I think it is then you are by with this we are taking care of right from the source where you avoid tampering to the end state where already of course the symmetric key is shared between both the parties, and then we have the encryption and decryption happening for this, right?
Right.
All right. So, little bit I want to touch upon while you have, you are looking at, or anybody who's helping design these kind of systems for not just cars or vehicles, I think even for IoT, because a lot of these devices today are getting smarter and will have the theft issue, the attack surface is increasing. It will mean a lot. So when you're looking at the design for this to avoid, so this I think a lot of this solution is to avoid and prevent it in the first place, right? Is Are there also aspects where you have detecting that a threat has happened or responding to the theft, like once a theft has happened, responding to it, either with the cryptography or without?
Yeah. So yes, they're both, right? So uh, uh, when they try to do the exchange, uh, after the encryption key uh, generates the data, right? And they try to match two data, right? And when they don't match, if it's a wrong key and it doesn't match, at that time, body control module sends the signal, and it would go um, to the vehicle's alarm. So it will start that light and sound show, basically pom
Hmm.
pom pom, like and
Yeah,
all the
yeah.
lights and the sound, yeah. So that basically turns on. So it's as soon as it detects that it's a wrong key, things goes up, and goes on, and it would alert everybody around them that somebody is trying to break into the vehicle. So that is part of this, the entire anti-theft idea that we have. You can also do like some other stuff, right? You can buy, there is a device which locks the steering itself. So even
Hmm.
if they turn the car on, even if they turn the car on, break into the car, all that, they can't move the steering wheel. So they can't really
Yeah.
go anywhere. I mean, they can't really steal the car.
So
That's
steering lock
another,
is, so this is also like a manufacturer, because I know that there are external systems that you can buy for locking the steering, but it is also one of the inherent responses for from the manufacturer side as well.
right. So,
Okay.
but that can be, I mean, if they can break into it somehow, right,
Hmm.
then it will not be activated because somehow they match the key, right? If that happens, then the steering will move,
Okay. 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 So
right?
it
So it
all
is where the
depends on the
aftermarket
key.
will come. Right,
It
right.
all
It all
depends on the
depends
key,
on
because
the
also I think at the heart of cryptography, right? Keys are at the heart of cryptography
right, the
always.
encryption key. Yeah.
I was a bit curious on another case where we have over the years we've been hearing on, and this is discussed in many conferences also, where you are able to, just like you were saying, read through the signals from the fob and can replay it for the car to be able to open it. Will this kind of a design also prevent something like that, and how does it do that?
Right. So again, it depends what data was. But in okay, so yes, it will because
Okay.
here the idea is they have a new code every time you turn the key on, right? They
Okay.
have like new 4 bytes
Yeah.
sending from engine to body. So those 4 bytes are new, and like those 4 bytes are added with the encryption key, which was pre stored, and it actually spits out a different value every time. So say for example, right, first time you turn the car on, right? Try to turn the car on. 1, 2, 3, 4
Hmm.
from engine goes to body,
Okay.
BCM, right? The body control module. So this 1, 2, 3, 4 plus your encryption key, say E1, E2, E2, E1, E2, E3, E4
Okay.
are merged with this 1, 2, 3, 4 and generate the data 5, 6, 7, 8. Engine does the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4. E1, E2, E3, E4, they merge, and the value comes out 5, 6, 7, 8. Now this 5, 6, 7, 8 comes to engine, they match. Oh yeah, they are both 5, 6, 7, 8. We are good to go. Next time, right? You go home, you start the car on after 5 minutes. Instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, engine sends 11, 12, 13, 14, or 10, 11, like any other 4 digits,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So this time the value will be different. So it changes that value every time you turn the key on. So it's very hard to duplicate.
Okay. Okay. All right. So, okay, that answered a common thing, I think, which we have been seeing through the years. And I think earlier, a few years ago, I remember in some of the conferences they had this replay attacks, that were helping them to actually attack and break into cars. Yeah, so that answers that. I was actually interested on a slightly more advanced scenario, and maybe you can, share more information around this. Now that we have, and I'll extend it to what's happening today also. So now that we have, so the car itself is an ecosystem, and now there could be other systems that are connected to the car, or within maybe the network that car is a part of. And it is talking to other such devices or systems, or even servers, or any other controls which may be there for the car. So two things: one is the interconnected devices, from that perspective, when the car is connected to maybe talking to other such similar systems, that interaction, plus today we have also cars that run on autopilot almost fully. It has started coming in future, that will come in also. So this is also slightly futuristic, that they start talking to each other, and that's when you of course will need way more higher degree of this protection. But what do you see in terms of those cars where you have interconnected communication with other such systems, and are there any threats there? Will systems like these protect that as well, or what should be the approach for people who are designing it?
Yeah, so yes, we have threats, right? And as I have like in the link, right? I have one of the link, the paper by uh, uh, I think it's Berkeby, Andrej.
Okay.
There's a link, and in that, right, they actually said that they actually tried uh, 15 or 16 automakers to see if they can steal the data, and
Hmm.
out of that, they were able to do it in 10 cases. So out of
Oh,
15, they were able to stand. Yes,
60%.
so yeah. So it's very high rate, right? And the main issue is again this, right? That nowadays you don't have to take car to the once you buy the car, right? You don't have to go back to a dealer to do any upgrades, right? They do like through internet. So a
Hmm.
dealer can flash your CPU like with the new code revise, like if the revised
Update.
software is
Yeah.
available, right? The update
Yeah.
software version 2.1 available, you don't have to go to dealer and connect the cable and update the CPU. No, you don't need to do that. Dealers do that on online, right? You don't even know, like you are at home and the car is at like home all night. Next morning you wake up, is updated, right? That's where we are. So my point is there are like car is almost all the time hooked up to internet somewhere and
Hmm.
somehow. So hackers have more options now
Yeah.
to steal the data, to do the wrong things, right?
Hmm.
So yes, there is a high risk also now, and there is a. I mean, automakers are trying, but hackers are also going step up. So there is always a risk. Yes.
Yeah, I do see that the so while we are looking from a design perspective, we'll also have a lot of communication playing a role, because there is now we are going out of the car physically, like in terms of the network. There
Mhm.
is data, there is signal commands, updates, and other things which are happening over the wire. So it becomes like, applications maybe talking to each other, and then authenticating each other will also become a big thing, because it's not just now between the communication between the fob and the car, it's the car and maybe the car and the network, like you said, the
Dealer.
updates
Yeah.
happening over the network. So there can be things where attackers will try to update your firmware or add things
You're
like,
right.
like we do in our typical supply chain attacks. So these things will open
Correct.
up where you'll need to authenticate, and of course again cryptography will play a major role in that case.
Right. Right. So what they do, one of the things they do right now to protect from this is when they build the car, they every car is assigned with an asymmetric key, like we do it on the
Okay.
internet, right? So, like there's a public key and the two keys, right?
Private key, huh?
So yeah, public key and private key, and they actually have one set of key for each car they build. So every time they're trying to do that, they're trying to authenticate, hey, this is the right key, and then they do it. But again, like hackers are a step ahead always and try to steal this, but. So there is a there are some ways around to prevent or minimize the hacks, right? I mean, yes, automakers are doing, and every see like it's there in every thing, right? Right now, I'm sure India has this too. But when you travel, right, uh, your document, the passport, they scan, right? If you go to the immigration, they scan it. And what that does, that's again the same thing. Asymmetric encryption key. That there is a key embedded on your document under your picture, and they have another key on the other side. So you can't really duplicate your picture. See, like I know the horror stories like 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, but people used to cut your picture page from passport and hook up. I mean,
Hmm.
have. create a duplicate passport. That can't be done anymore because the same idea again, the asymmetric encryption key, it won't match with your document. So if you take the picture out, put it on someone else's picture, it will not fly anymore. So same thing is applied in a car. I mean, same concept.
Yeah, so just a joke. I think everybody needs to study cryptography as much as attackers also need to. Yeah. But on that
Yeah.
note, I was also thinking, when you said that attackers are a step ahead, and I was thinking, what do they, what is it? Of course, I have been on that side, and I sometimes secretly even enjoy when people say that. But jokes apart, there is a lot of implementation that they don't have to do, right? They can go lone wolf and solve for something, attack, and constantly do that, and stuff like that, and can succeed. But the implementation part is also a big challenge in the defensive side, and I wanted to know from your perspective, while designing the security for such a vehicle, and the algorithm and everything is one thing, but on ground implementation is another thing. So what was your experience when you actually took the solution, did an on ground implementation? What were the technical challenges, the people challenges? Because all of these things are more on the defensive side, right? So what was your experience? What about the tests? uh, how did they go and all?
Yeah, it was it was a long one, right? I mean, we actually took almost a year from design to have it like in the plant, right, in the car, because it's like initially number one goal, right, was to write the software which works the way we wanted. So we test that in the lab. Then we try to flash it in the CPU, and it doesn't work because it's too big. Because like the CPU that we have in laptop or something, there were more RAM and all that. In the cars, we don't have that flexibility. So we have to have like compressed code and software and all that. So we have to fine tune again. And after all that happened, right, we had to test it in the lab, but then also we have to test in the vehicle because we can't really rely on this, right? Because like uh, like every car company, they have probably built like 2-3 million vehicles or 30-40 lakhs vehicles, right, every year. And this would be different. Like if it's something is wrong, if it's not tested in actual life, then it could be a big issue. So so that has to be done, right? And actually it took us a lot of time because every time we do something, it's not as easy as like testing something in the lab. Because you test it in the lab, you take this to the car, you do the whole thing again, you learn the key, you make sure you program the encryption key on both ends, the whole 9 yards, right? You have to go through the whole process again. So it took time to make sure that everything goes out smoothly. So there were, yeah, issues along the way, like I said, in at every step, starting from doing the software to we flash and build the vehicle in the plant. When I started, it was a little bit different. Now we also have what they call like lightweight cryptography, which is like very easy easy to implement, and it doesn't take as much RAM and ROM space and all that. So it's a little bit improved. Even uh, the cryptographic chip that we use in the car right now has improved a lot more in last 15-20 years. So the size is very small, and also the speed is very fast. The whole thing happens very fast. So all these things have improved, and that helped us in making the vehicle secure. But it took time. Like I said, it took like 15 years to to come to this stage for automotive industry.
Yeah, but good, it's there. Any fun
Yeah,
incidents or stories from there with your final testing and everything being successful?
yeah. I mean, we have like many fun stories because we're a team of engineers. We worked all the time, and many time it happens that when we want to test things like that, whether it works or not, we have a we have a one byte in the software which we can toggle to turn on and off, right? And this it does not happen in the plant or anywhere, only uh, in the when we test the vehicle, right? So we were in early stage. The first time we flashed the code, we turned the car, everything works smoothly. I mean, you don't even feel that it has a new software. Oh my God! And everybody were so happy. So we invited our chief engineer, and he tried everything worked. Wow, everything was so good. 2 or 3 days later, we updated some stuff in there, put the thing back in the car. It doesn't start. What happened?
Okay.
Then we realized that the first time when we put the software in, we disabled the anti-theft. We did not even use that. So it wasn't even there, it wasn't even functioning.
Okay. Ah,
So the
this is funny.
car was starting without it, and everybody were happy. But okay, it wasn't even there. We did not even test anything. So
Yeah, but
yeah,
it's
things
very
like that happens.
practical.
But
Yeah, you're so engrossed in the problem itself, right? That these
right,
things
you
can be an oversight.
you ignore the small things, and then you
Yeah.
realized what happened here. Yeah.
Great, great. This is fun, but I think it also shows the how much effort actually goes into testing these things, right? I mean, I think it's different for software because everything can be tested at one place. At best, you're creating different environments, and that is also painful for many of us because you've tested it in dev, and then it's being tested in staging, and then there is sometimes pre-prod, and then there is prod, and then that
Oh
itself
yeah.
is a big challenge for us when we think about it. But now when I'm thinking from the perspective of real physical devices where these systems are there of course is a different level of challenge altogether because you're moving from your system to different systems and the actual car, and then maybe prototypes or your demo environment or staging environment, whatever is the equivalent of that. So that's a different level of challenge, but congratulations on having done that. And thanks a lot for sharing a lot of this today with us, Sandeep. And thanks for being on the show.
No, no, I'm actually happy to be here. This is something I think help everybody to understand how this works, and I think it's it's interesting, and I love to talk about this all the time. So, I'm very happy to be here, and I really thank you for having me on the show.
Thanks for being on the show, and thanks everyone for watching us today. And we will see you all in the next episode. Until then, bye bye. Hey y'all, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Breakpoint Security Podcast. Your support means that we can bring more such conversations back to you. Share with your friends and colleagues, and stay tuned for more episodes from Breakpoint. Until then, bye bye.